And we're back to our kind of normal filming area. I have another scary story for you guys, and I'm really excited about this one, so honestly, I just want to get right into the story. So Tia, the girl who wrote I Wanted a Job But Was Given a Nightmare, actually wrote another story for me to tell, and I got like the exclusive preview of the story, so she sent it to me before she posted it on No Sleep. Thank you, Tia. I'm so excited to read it. I haven't even skimmed it. Like I've read absolutely no parts of this because I know I'm not going to be disappointed, and I'm excited to just like read it on camera for the first time. So let's get started. And I've had a good voice lately. I haven't been losing my voice. I think we can handle this. And I have my large Diet Coke. So this story is called It Lives Under the Floor. Around 2 years ago, I was struggling for money. Desperately struggling. I had just gotten laid off from a job I knew would only be temporary, but I hadn't lined up anything for myself until it was too late. Okay, yes, I was a senior in high school at the time, so it wasn't like my life depended on making money, but claiming my freedom as a 17-year-old male and filling my gas tank was mandatory. Lucky for me, my mom was friends on Facebook with a woman from our local church who had just bought an old, rundown home in town that needed repairs. She didn't have a lot of money to hire contractors and such, so she posted a status to friends seeking anybody who would be willing to work under the table for a few extra bucks. My mom told me about it, and I messaged the woman right away. Her name was Melanie. We exchanged a few messages back and forth before setting a time for when I would come to the house and she would show me around. The house was located down the street from my school, so I walked over when the school day was over. When I first got there, Melanie greeted me in the front yard as I took a view of the house. A large oak tree stood in the front yard with an old-looking rope swing attached to one of its thick branches. A screened-in wraparound porch covered the front and the right side of the house, which was built into a hill, the back being the lower side. The backyard was a large, overgrown field that bothered a small stream. The house itself was painted white and looked as if it could use a good wash and touch-up of paint, as pieces of worn-away siding littered the front yard. Based on the design and the wear and tear, it was obvious the house was a couple of centuries old. "Jacob, thank you so much for coming," Melanie said, reaching forward. I shook her hand with a smile on my face. "No problem, I'm happy to help." Melanie was a straightforward type of woman, so small talk wasn't necessary. She quickly led me inside to get to work. After passing through the front door, we were immediately greeted by a wooden staircase a few feet to the left of us. To the right was a living room, which contained two raggedy-looking chairs that were covered in plastic. The wallpaper was a dull blue with white polka dots, and the far wall in the back had an empty china cabinet built into it. We continued through the living room, which led to the kitchen. Rooster wallpaper was the first thing that stood out to me. The floors creaked under our weight, which made me pause to look at Melanie. It sounded as if the floor was going to give underneath us. She gave me a reassuring pat on the shoulder. "No worries, it'll hold out." The house was built in the late 1700s, and all the floors have been replaced, except for the kitchens. That's going to be first on our list besides those 70s countertops. I looked towards the countertops after she spoke and cringed at the sight. They were downright ugly. A mustard yellow color with a dark orange trim where the countertops met the wall. I understood what she meant. From there, she also showed me the dining room and then led me upstairs to the two bedrooms. Lastly, she showed me the basement. We walked down the creepy steps into complete darkness. The cold, misty air hit my nose with overwhelming power, and I coughed a few times to allow my lungs to adjust. The floor was completely dirt, the walls made of stone. Goosebumps ran down my arms as the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I felt strange, like something was off. At the time, I shook the feeling away, thinking I was only being paranoid because the place was so old. If only I had known. Apparently, I'd spaced out for a moment or two, because the next thing I knew, Melanie was handing me an old broom. "Here, use this to remove as many of the cobwebs down here as you can. I'll be back soon. I just gotta run to the store for a few things." Shit, this was gonna take forever, I thought. The walls and staircases were practically lined with cobwebs. I let out a quiet grunt before getting to work. Time seemed to move slow. I hated spiders, so it seemed like my arms couldn't move fast enough. Of course, it was really hard to do a good job anyways, as I was only using the little bit of light the basement windows let in as my guide. After completing 2 walls, I pulled my phone out from my back pocket to check on time and couldn't believe my eyes. It had been over an hour. Yeah, I thought time was moving slowly at first, but I guess not. And Melanie still wasn't back yet. I went to text her when I realized I had no service down there. So I put the broom against the wall and began to make my way towards the staircase, only to find myself suddenly sinking. Not having enough time to balance myself, I face-planted. My leg had fallen through the floor, and I was now standing in a giant hole. As my confusion and shock faded away, curiosity filled me. The hole. It seemed to be larger than it was. Like it continued underneath the floor, as if the hole underneath of the floor was hollow. To confirm my suspicion, I wiggled my leg around without any problem. Then I fully extended it, moving it back and forth without hitting anything. It was hollow. So I grabbed my phone again and turned the flashlight on. I wanted to see what was underneath. I wanted to see if there was something holding the rest of the floor up, but I didn't get a chance. Jacob, sorry I'm late. It's like everyone decided to go to Home Depot at the same time as me. The line took forever. Melanie opened the door of the basement just as I was lifting myself out of the hole. She walked down a couple of steps to get a better view of me, but stopped when she noticed the giant hole in the ground. Oh my gosh, what happened? Are you okay? She rushed down the steps and walked over, helping me brush off. The dirt floor was unstable over there. I didn't realize it until my leg fell through, I said, putting most of my weight on my other leg. I hadn't realized the shearing pain until now. After I was brushed off enough, Melanie brought me back upstairs so we could get a better look at the damage. When I pulled my pant leg up, I almost puked. My whole calf was covered in yellow and purple splotches and had swollen up like a balloon, and I wasn't known to bruise easily. We called my mom soon after to come pick me up. Melanie wasn't comfortable with me continuing to work for her that night and said that she would contact me within the next few days when my leg was better. And in the meantime, her and her husband were going to see about getting the hole filled, so something like that wouldn't happen again. I didn't want to wait a couple of days to return to the house, especially if the hole was filled up. I understand the saying, curiosity killed the cat, but I mean it when I say that my curiosity was literally eating at my brain. I could barely sleep that night, thinking about the possibilities of what was underneath the floor. I just knew there had to be something. And lucky for me, the next day would be a Saturday. I wouldn't have school or anything else to do. I knew that Melanie and her family would be away for a family event, and Melanie had shown me where they kept the spare key to the house. But I couldn't do this little adventure alone. I was going to need a hand. He was going to be pissed off that I was calling him so late, but I knew that he would be somewhat interested since he had experience in creepy stuff like this. The phone rang twice before he picked up. Hello? Chris. Hey, it's Jacob. I'm going to need your help. Dude, you made me cancel my plans tonight for this, Chris said, gesturing to the house as we got out of his car. It was Saturday night around 11 p.m., and because our town was so small and hardly anyone was out and about, this was the perfect time for some sleuthing. I rolled my eyes at him and pushed his arm a bit. Loosen up, would ya? I just want to see what's down in the basement. It's not like it's going to take forever. We'll be in and out in no time. Then you can go back to doing whatever the hell you had planned. I led us to the front door and stretched upwards, putting all of my weight on my good leg to grab the extra key hidden on the top protruding door frame. Just as I grabbed the key, a wave of nausea hit me so hard that I lost my balance and fell back against the porch railing, turning myself over so I could release my stomach contents into the bushes. I could see Chris standing behind me from over my shoulder, and he put his hand on my arm with a worried expression. You okay, man? I nodded, wiping my mouth with my sleeve before moving to unlock the door. Are you sure? He pressed. You're as white as a ghost. I'm fine. I all but snapped. Chris raised his eyebrows at me and put his hands up in defense. I smiled apologetically at him. My curiosity was driving me crazy. I was antsy. I just wanted to see what was down there and get the hell out. I unlocked the door and moved over to turn one of the construction lights on so we could see where we were going. This place gives me the creeps, Chris stated as I guided us over to the basement door. You haven't seen anything yet. With each step we took into the dark, me leading the way, the more I began to panic on the inside. The atmosphere felt more sinister than before. Something was different. Something was wrong. Chris had taken out his phone, shining the flashlight around the empty basement. You weren't kidding. This place is straight out of a horror movie. I shrugged my shoulders, continuing on towards the hole. It was placed in the corner of the basement, and the way Chris was positioned, his flashlight only hit a part of it, and that little bit of light was enough. I felt my feet practically nail themselves to the ground as I sucked in a needy breath. I swear I saw the outline of a person's head quickly stick out of the hole, as if trying to peer over the edge of it. Oh my God, I whispered, eyes glued to the hole. Chris came up behind me, his flashlight shining fully on the hole now. Nothing was there. It was gone. I blinked a couple of times to make sure my mind wasn't playing tricks on me. What? What did you see? Nothing. I shook my head, not wanting to seem like a wimp in front of him. I think maybe there's a raccoon or something down there. Wouldn't surprise me. He walked over, now facing me from the opposite side of the hole and shining his light directly into it. The hole was about 2 feet deep and was dirt underneath as well. I took my phone out too and turned my flashlight on. The more light there was, the better I felt about the situation. We couldn't see much from our position, so we both decided to get on our stomachs and peer down into the hole, looking all directions with our flashlights. The floor really was hollow underneath. From my side, the underneath was empty, and I could see the rest of the stone wall. I felt relief for a moment, having thought I freaked out over nothing, until I felt Chris begin to shake violently. Look over here, now, he harshly whispered, continuing to shake me. I lowered my head into the hole, lifting it up to look in the direction Chris was looking, and I almost shit my pants. In the corner of the hollowed-out floor, someone's bare back was facing us. No, not someone. Something. It seemed to be hunched over, its vertebrae now clearly visible through its thin and veiny gray skin. No part of it was clothed, and it seemed to have no hair on its head. Its bony structure seemed to move electronically as it shifted around. Before thinking, I brought my phone around to get a better look, adding to Chris's light. Big mistake. It whipped its head around and let out a horrifying and low shriek, revealing razor-sharp teeth, its mouth covered in a red substance. Its eyes were large, so large that it seemed like they were ready to pop out of their sockets. Its nose was flat against its face, showing only 2 holes. What disturbed me the most wasn't the monster's features, but what it was doing. In its claws like hands, the fingertips ending in sharp points like a dagger, was a large bone, with tissue and muscle attached. Behind the creature, I was able to make out the body of a human. Teeth marks covered the body and they looked badly decomposed. Their stomach was ripped open, insides splattered onto the dirt ground, and one of their legs was missing. My eyes absorbed the horrible sight within seconds, before Chris yanked me back by my arms and practically dragged me out of the basement as the shriek of the creature filled my ears. I was going into shock. I could barely register what was happening until Chris pushed me into the car and we were ripping out of the driveway. What the fuck? What the actual fuck was that? Chris screamed, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tight that his knuckles were turning white. I just stared at him, eyes wide before my brain caught up to my body and I wailed out. My throat began to tighten up as I felt the blood rush to my head, and I bent forward to place my head in between my legs. I was having a panic attack. Chris pulled his car over to the side of the road before turning to me and shaking me by the shoulder. I put a hand up, telling him to give me a moment before opening the passenger side door and puking for the second time that night. Though this time, there was nothing left, so it was mostly just stomach acid. I stayed bent over for a moment, my seatbelt keeping me in the car. I tried to slow down my breathing. I don't know why, but my mind began to scream at me to look behind the car. I'm glad I did. About 500 feet behind our car was the creature, running towards us with inhuman speed, still hunched over. My eyes locked with its eyes before I quickly pulled myself completely into the car, shutting my door before locking it. "Drive! Drive!" I screamed, my voice cracking a bit. Without questioning me, Chris pulled away from the curb and we sped off. I looked over my shoulder, panting as I watched the creature easily catching up to us. Chris followed my eyes, looking in his rearview mirror. Shit. My body was suddenly lurched forward, my seatbelt harshly rubbing against my chest. Chris had floored the gas pedal. We were doing at least 70 miles an hour on a road that had a speed limit of 35. I looked over my shoulder again, but my view of the creature was now blocked by flashing blue and red lights. Chris and I looked at each other in a state of panic before locking the doors and reluctantly pulling over. We waited for what seemed like forever on the side of the road. After a few minutes, the police officer came over to Chris's side of the car and knocked on his window, to which Chris hesitantly rolled down. "Good evening, officer." "Sir, do you know how fast you were going?" Yes, sir, I do." While Chris spoke with the officer, I was frantic in the seat next to him, looking around every couple of seconds for the creature, but it seemed to have disappeared. "What's wrong with your friend?" I turned into the conversation now and looked over at the police officer, still a bit too shaken up to speak. Nothing, officer. He's just never been in a car when it's been pulled over." What a shitty lie. The officer thought so too. "Both of you, step out of the vehicle for me, please." I guess with our frightened states, we looked like a couple of teenagers who got caught under the influence because the officer asked us to take a sobriety test. Then he made us call our parents. I got in so much trouble. My mom grounded me for a month. That included not allowing me to work for Melanie anymore, which meant not going to that house, and I was perfectly okay with that. Chris and I never really told anyone what happened that night or why we were speeding. People just figured we were doing stupid teenager stuff. I'm only guessing that Melanie and her family had that hole filled, and the creature didn't seem to bother them, as I'd never heard of any tragic murders or disappearances on the local news station. And unfortunately, that's not the last time I saw it. About 4 months later, I was in my room, watching Vine compilations on my computer, when I heard a loud thump come from underneath my room. I quickly sat up, pausing my video, as I furrowed my eyebrows and got out of bed. Another thump, this one louder than before, directly underneath from where I was standing now. At first, I thought it was my mom rummaging through some old stuff in the basement. That was, until I realized we had moved into a new apartment a month earlier, and we didn't have a basement, and my mom was working the night shift. I began to panic. There's no way. There's no possible way. But my suspicions were confirmed when I heard the same gut-wrenching shriek sound from the floorboards below my feet, only it being a bit softer now that it was muffled. I didn't think twice before dashing out of my room and down the hall, all the while the creature continuing to shriek right below me, but with the same volume. That's when it hit me. The creature was following me from underneath the floor. I ran out like my life depended on it. Heck, my life did depend on it. I got into my car, started it up, my tires screeching as I pulled out of the parking lot. I glanced in my rearview mirror every couple of moments, expecting to see the creature on my tail. Thankfully, it never came into sight. I arrived at my mom's work in hysterics, barely able to utter a logical explanation as to why I was there. Eventually, I came up with a lie that some people had broken into our house and bolted when they saw me, but I drove to her work because I was scared to be alone. My mom called the police and had them scope out the house, turning up nothing. I told her I didn't want to stay in the neighborhood, and she didn't question me. We moved out about a week later. I called Chris and I told him the truth about everything. I also told him to watch out for himself because it could go after him too. Hell, it could still be coming after me, but I haven't heard it or seen it since that night. I keep a machete by my bedside though, just in case. I don't know why I'm sharing my fucked up story. A lot of you probably won't believe me. I wouldn't even believe myself, to be honest. But my anxiety attacks, which have been dormant for almost 2 years now, have come back full force. And I honestly believe that that thing, that creature, has something to do with it. I think it's coming for me again. Am I paranoid? Maybe. But please take my advice. Listen to my warning. Do not take this lightly. Whatever it is not human. Not even close. It will kill you when it gets the chance. And if you're not cautious, it will get the chance. Prepare yourself. Protect yourself. If you're a heavy sleeper, you're fucked. It seems to only come out at night. That probably explains why I'm an insomniac now. So if you ever hear a scratching coming from down below, if you ever find a hole in your basement, and if you ever hear a bone-chilling screech in the middle of the night, do as I say. Run. And that is the end of that story. I think that that's the end. I don't think she was gonna add anything else to this one. Dude, I love your story so much. I say this all the time. I don't understand how you guys write that. I'm not talented. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. I hope you guys are proud of me. It's only 8:15 when I'm filming. It's not 2 o'clock in the morning. It's not midnight. I'm not at somebody else's house. It's not that great of an accomplishment, but see ya. Dude, my makeup looks so nice today. All right, bye.